Hi, good evening, everybody. How are you? Want to thank everybody for coming out. My name is Brad West. I'm the communications officer here at the City of Palm Coast. We know this project is very important in your neighborhood. There's been a lot of questions and concerns, so we thought it was an opportunity to invite you all down to come together, and we have members of our Stormwater and Engineering Department team. If you all could raise your hands if you're staff at the Stormwater and Engineering Department. So they're here. We've got a multitude of people, and we have a gentleman who's the consultant that designed this project and helped with the design of it. So to answer your questions, and what we're going to do is we have a brief presentation. Mike Peel will go through, and then we're going to open it up for some questions and answers, and I'll come around with a mic at that time so you don't have to get up and walk around and anything, and we'll get your questions answered. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mike Peel, who will go through the presentation.
Can everybody hear me okay? No. No? Yes? No? No. Okay. How about now? Is that better? How about now? Okay. All right. We appreciate everyone coming out. I know you're anxious to hear all the details about our project. I wanted to start off first just talking a little bit in general about our stormwater program and some of the things that we've been doing. Some of you may know that about 3 years ago, we started looking at the stormwater system a little differently and implementing what we refer to as our enhanced stormwater program. When this community was originally developed by ITT, they were primarily focused on building houses, building communities, and selling homes. After that, the Palm Coast Community Development Corporation basically took over the maintenance, and the focus was primarily on responding to issues when they occurred and just necessary maintenance. And beginning in around 2005, the City of Palm Coast had their stormwater department, but the focus still basically remained the same, and that was being more reactionary and dealing with issues as they came up. And some of that was constraints with resources and funds. After a couple of hurricanes, and about 50 years of very little to no maintenance of the stormwater infrastructure, the city realized that we needed to take a different approach. The city stormwater system is a pretty vast, I think, stormwater system. As you can see from the slides, over 1,200 miles of swales. We have freshwater canals. We have weirs and control structures. We have many miles of ditches, swells, a lot of pipes, bridges. All of these kind of work together as part of the stormwater system, and you really have to pay attention to all of them. And they're all, I know everyone is concerned about their swells, but this is all part of our effort to improve the swell maintenance program as well. Some of the things that we were trying to do as part of this enhanced program is to put more focus on developing a good inspection program, asset management, developing a more detailed maintenance program. We took all of the resources, the equipment, the personnel that are involved with the operation, the maintenance of the stormwater system, the capital improvement projects. We put everyone into the same division, same department. We relocated to a central facility, which is, that was largely to improve the communication between the groups that are working on it, improve our coordination, and the efficiency of how we do things. We also started utilizing more technology, more analytical methods to analyze the system. Instead of just reacting to one problem and focusing on that, if we have a problem, how is this affecting people upstream? How does it affect the people downstream? How does the whole system work? So we continued to put an emphasis on the routine maintenance and addressing homeowners' concerns, which of course is important, but also just kind of step back and look at the system as a whole, better understand how it functions, how the whole city functions, and use some of the technology and science available to us to take a little more sophisticated look, I guess. One of the things we did was start to look at a master stormwater plan and look at how the city functions as a whole. In 2017, we partnered with the Water Management District to obtain updated LIDAR information. And LIDAR is, it stands for light detection and ranging. It's a laser technique that basically allows you to fly a large area and developed a very detailed three-dimensional model of the terrain. If you look at the graphics that are up here, the image that's in the center is a 2004 LIDAR. If you look at the image to the left of it, that's the same area from 2017 LIDAR, and you can see how much more detail is in that image. You can see the islands in the Walmart parking lot, for example. Part of what this does is provides us a lot of detailed information about topography and the terrain and where everything flows. And this information is part of what's put into stormwater modeling programs. And what the stormwater modeling helps us do is predict flood elevations, predict how much water you're going to have, what the elevations are going to be during storms. It's a mathematical model. It's the same modeling that FEMA uses to develop the flood maps and to determine base flood elevations. We put this information in. It deals with topography, ground cover, soils type, how much rainfall you're getting, what the intensity of the rainfall, the duration of the storms. You can use different storm events, and it helps us see what's happening throughout the city, and it helps us predict where we're going to have problems. It helps us pinpoint choke points. If we use it to help plan capital projects. If we have a drainage issue in a particular area, we can run this model, help pinpoint where the issues are. We can look at what-if scenarios. What if we open up this channel and we increase these pipes? We can run the model again, and it'll tell us what's happening. And it helps us determine the benefit, if that benefits the system or it doesn't. If it doesn't, then we try something else. And part of the goal is to develop projects that we think give us the most bang for the buck, provide the most benefit to the most people. So if you're having issues with your swales, we're focusing on the swales, but the swales, everyone knows water drains downhill. The swales are at the very top of the hill. So that's where it all starts. And the swales drain into ditches, and the ditches drain into canals, and the canals drain into bigger canals. If the ditches aren't functioning, and prior to this program, we really weren't putting any effort into the ditches. We just, at that point in time, we didn't have the resources. If the ditches don't function properly, there's only so much you can do with the swales. The swales, if you get it to drain, it's going to hit the ditches and it'll back up again. If the ditches don't function properly, or if the canals don't function properly, the ditches will back up. So while we're focusing on neighborhood swales and continuing to maintain the system, we're also looking at the whole city and neighborhoods is one unit. And when we started this program, I mean, obviously knew we had drainage issues in the E section. So we wanted to look at how the entire system functions and where our issues are and what we can do to open up the entire system, help it breathe better, help it flow better. And we identified, well, when I was talking about our modeling program, this was one of the sections that was among the first that we modeled. And as part of that modeling effort, we looked at the canals, we looked at everything that's happening upstream, and the canals basically are probably 50, 60 years old. There's never been any real maintenance. They've silted in pretty bad. You have a lot of choke points where ditches flow in the canals and silt is built up. You have years and years worth of sediment and muck that's built up in the bottom. So the approach is to open up the system starting downstream and go upstream. If you think about it too, everyone in the E section, all your property drains into these canals. So obviously the canals aren't functioning, you're gonna have problems with the neighborhoods and the swells. So this is our first major project to start opening up the system. And it's about flood protection and water quality. I mean, that's really the goal, to provide as much flood protection as possible. So when we get a tropical storm or hurricane, if we can get the water out of there faster, we can move it more quickly, we can move more water, then you're gonna have less flooding. And that's basically, a main objective with this. It's also about water quality. When we restore these canals to the original cross sections, you're going to have more depth. It's going to be a little wider. It has more capacity. We're going to get a lot of that nasty stuff that's in the bottom out of there. The increased depth is going to mean cleaner water. It's going to mean less aquatic growth in the canals, which means less maintenance, fewer herbicides that have to be used to deal with the aquatic growth. It's going to result in more benefits as we open up the ditches, and it's going to give us a lot more flexibility in working with the swells and helping to make the swells work better. And just a basic overview of what we're doing, what our intent is. As I've said, conveyance, capacity, water quality, improve the level of performance for the swells. And as part of that, we have to go in and open up the canals. I know a lot of people are concerned about taking down trees. It has never been the intent to clear cut these right-of-ways, and that's been made very clear to the contractor. The clearing is to the limits necessary to do the work, but some of that has to be done. You have to be able to get in there and do the work. But also, we've already done work in there, desilting pipes. We've lined pipes. These are pipes that are old and deteriorating. So we try to get ahead of it before the pipes fail so that we don't have to shut down roads to replace pipes. And we actually line them in place and you don't have to disrupt traffic. So we've already started doing a lot of that in the east section. And I'm sure most of you know we've already started doing some clearing. This is just kind of a general overview of what the timeline is for the project. We're beginning construction on Eisenhower. That section of the canal should be completed around September. Then we'll start construction on, East Hampton, and then we'll start construction on Eisenhower. So that will begin as soon as we finish the first phase. And we should complete the project as far as the dredging activities around January of 22. And I wanted to let you know, for those that may not know, we also have a CIP project dashboard that you can access on our website. If you go to this website, you can look at every capital project that's going on, not just stormwater, but traffic, all our capital projects. You can see what stage we're at. You can see if it's on track. And this is maintained almost daily. And you can always, of course, customer service. We have Palm Coast Connect. If you go to the city's website, there's actually a lot of information on the website about stormwater. If you go to the stormwater tabs, there's a lot of information about what we're doing. There's information in there about our spray program, where we're spraying, what we're using, our maintenance schedule for our swells, our canals. We maintain and track everything we do through GIS, and it's updated almost daily. And if you go in and look at some of this information, it's almost real-time information as far as what we're doing, where we're at, and what we're planning to do. And with that, we're going to pass the microphone around. If you maybe raise your hand, I'll hand you the microphone. If you have questions or comments, we'd be happy to address them.
We have one.
We live on Edgewater Drive, and we back up to the Eisenhower. My question is, when you're dredging this, it involves mechanical equipment that's going to actually be in all of the waterway in order to do this dredging, or only in certain spots?
Well, it requires mechanical equipment being in the waterway. It's kind of, we want to be occupying the entire waterway at the same time. So it's kind of stays, you move upstream, all the equipment.
And all that equipment is going to be in the water?
Well, some of it's going to be in the water, some of it's going to be on the banks.
Okay. So we'll know if our property is going to be affected when you're going to be doing this project.
Yes, and we're in the process now of also trying to better identify any areas where maybe homeowners have taken landscaping beyond the property or out into the right of way, or you have maybe fencing or whatever has been done. We're in the process of identifying that. The intent is to contact homeowners, try to work out something so that that's not an issue, hopefully. But like I said, we're going on, you have to do a certain amount of clearing, you have to have a certain amount of access to equipment. And we're hauling out literally thousands of truckloads a month. So we plan to do our best to work with the homeowners. Hopefully, homeowners will be working with us. And
Is any of that dredging material considered to be hazardous?
no, it's not hazardous. It has certain contaminants in it, which occurs in almost all the canals, the ditches, to be honest. It's not hazardous material. Some of the contaminants are above the level that's considered desirable for residential areas, not for commercial, industrial necessarily. But all the materials should be removed and hauled off-site in this place.
You've already started, if I'm not mistaken, they blocked off Eric Drive close to Edgewater. And I think that was because there was either dredging of the culverts underneath the road, or you actually replaced them. Can you tell me exactly what happened?
That was in the past.
It wasn't that long ago. A year, year and a half?
We've done work in the last year or two of desilting a lot of pipes, and the water pipes, when you come into the subdivision,
Right.
we reline them, so it's probably associated with desilting pipes and relining.
Thank you. I'm over on Evans Drive. Question is, you kind of just said clearing. I was wondering if you could do a little bit of clarifying. It's a lot of questions a lot of us have. We've heard different things, nothing official, but we're understanding that all trees, everything with outside of 3 foot from the property line will be taken away.
No, that's not necessarily true.
Can you please clarify what will be cleared? And the other reason I'm asking this is we know people in another area that says things were taken out and they're already starting to have some slides, and we're worried about our fences that are on our property line and that's sliding out too. So can you give us a little bit more on what's going to be cleared?
When we go in and reshape the canal, we're trying to restore it to its original cross-section. And the existing topography versus what's going to be new is what determines how far we got to go. So as we go down the canal, we generate cross-sections through there. It's basically kind of taking a slice through the canal, we can see that cross-section and what's there, and then we superimpose the cross-section of what it's going to be. And that tells us how far we're going out and how close we're getting to property lines. In some cases, we're not getting very close, in cases we are. And as the surveyors come through and stake it, what they should be doing is staking those limits of work so that we clear what we have to clear to get in there to do the work, but not beyond that. And then there's quite a few areas in there where we definitely are clearing the entire work.
Are all the stakes there? I mean, we go back there now and see where they
I wouldn't necessarily trust the stakes that are there right now. I mean, they've done their initial pass through, and probably at this point, they've probably staked out the right of way. So if you see the stakes, it's probably the limits of the right of way, and not necessarily the limits of clearing.
Repeat that again.
Pick up the mic.
Use that mic right there.
What the stakes that you probably see out there now were put in by the surveyors to define the limits of the right-of-way. So we know where your property lines are. We want to stay off of your property. But now they're coming back and they're looking at staking the limits of clearing, which should be inside of that, if that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, that was my question. And the other question is, as you're doing the dredging, do you have to remove trees on both sides of the canal as you're going down? Does that have to be done?
Typically, yes.
Okay.
So is that your plan? This is what I was told when I called the city. Is your plan to take out all the trees on both sides of the East Hampton and Eisenhower, but mainly East Hampton is what I'm concerned about?
The plan is to take out the trees that are necessary to do the work. In some areas, it may be all the trees. In a lot of areas, it will not be all the trees.
Trees that are on the right-of-way on the east side of the East Hampton. I got 30 of them behind my house. Is your plan to take them down? And if you do take them, I don't have a problem with you taking them down. How are you going to take them out?
Yeah, they will. They already did. We had ours cleared already.
It was explained to me, they push them over with your cranes, or you push them with bulldozers, and they grab them, they pull them out, and they cut them up, and they pull them out with bobcats, and they put them on the trucks. But where are they taking them out? I was told strictly, I guess what you call not the drainage, not the ditches, but drainage canals. Is that the easements?
Yeah.
Is that where you're going to take them on? All the trees? And
Well,
the muck?
It's confined to the city right-of-way along the canal, yes. And the extent that we go on each side of the canal to take out trees is dependent on what the existing conditions are versus what we're reshaping the canal to.
Okay, but as far as taking it out, will you be taking out through my property? Will you be coming in through my property, or are you strictly coming in from?
Are you asking if we're going to come across through your property? No, absolutely not.
There's a way to get all these trees out, but that's why I was asking.
No, we're not coming onto anyone's property. There will be areas where we'll be coming in off the road, but it's going to be down city easements, drainage easements, and right-of-ways.
just, I'm going to keep it balanced, so I'm going to go over on the other side, and then I'll come back, okay? So we had some questions over here.
Hi, we live, us four anyway, right on Emerson Drive. And your dozers came through 2 weeks ago with no warning whatsoever, stripped every bit of vegetation right up to our property line from the edge of the canal. So that's a done deal. I don't know what you mean by you're only going to clear as much as you need, because you went right up to our property line. Yeah, there was one tree left right on our property line. That was it. Everything else is stripped down to the mud. And scorched earth. And then we heard from the dozer people anyway, the plan was to eventually smooth out the dirt and put down sod. Well, my question is, what good is sod going to do? We're not watering it. We're not keeping chinch bugs out of it. And I don't see how that's going to act like, we had 20 pine trees on our lot alone taken out. That's not going to hold the bank like 20 pine trees. And we've already had dirt bikers come down from the power line where you pulled out all the trees in that mud, and they've been run up and down that. So they're going to do the same thing if you just put sod there. How are you going to keep them out?
Well, the clearing that took place, to be honest, that was a little miscommunication. We weren't told that they were going in to do it ahead of time. And when we found out they were doing it, we stopped them until we got a better handle on what they were doing. Whether or not they cleared beyond the limits of what they needed to do the work, I can't say. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. When we're done, yes, we'll be reshaping the banks, and we'll be revegetating it primarily with bahia, sod, seeding. Well, that's pretty typical.
I did want to take a moment to talk about the communication just for a moment too, because we use an application where we're able to, you hear at times where we say we geo-target and we message people in the community. The geo-targeting is something that I do, and the original message came from me as a request from our stormwater department. And what that draws from is your utility bills. So we do want to keep in communication with everybody throughout this process. So if you don't have an email address, or you do have one and you don't have it on your utility bill or your utility account, if you could go in and add that, I can refresh that list and make sure that we get to the widest possible group of people. So I know there was initially some communication that went out regarding one canal, and the contractor, I think, started a little bit earlier than anticipated, and they started on the other canal. So I apologize about the communication. That actually came from me as a request from our stormwater department, and then we attempted to correct that and update everybody from there. So email is one of, is a way we can communicate with you, and then the door hangers as well went up. But the emails are drawn from your utility bill. So if you have an email address and it's not on your utility account, if you can log in and update that, that would be wonderful. It would be helpful for us to keep in communication. So I have a gentleman right here.
Maintenance issue.
Oh, sure.
Finished that.
Were you
We're talking
finished
about
with that?
sodding it and grading it, and who's going to maintain it. Haven't you finished that before you get to another question?
Well, what exactly is the question?
Well, you've got bahia you're going to put down. Who's going to maintain it? Is the city going to come through twice a year and mow that? Who's going to water it? What's going to keep it from drying? I'm not going to water it. I'm not going to mow it. And we're going to have that eroding away back into the swale or into the canal. Now, we had 20 pines and assorted other trees and shrubs back there. There's nothing that sod is going to do better than what we had previously. So how are you going to maintain it?
Well, the city would be responsible for maintaining it, and the contractor's responsible for making sure that we get well, I'm trying to answer your question.
Is it going to be cut or mowed? Who's going to water it? Or left to turn into weeds and trees again?
Let me tell you, that's a steep little pitch too.
It is now.
Yeah.
It wasn't steep, but it is now.
It is now. They had the sod now it's not there, but when they do, it's gonna be there.
What would you suggest that we do?
I would suggest a retaining wall, because what's going to happen is that you're going to have erosion. And I've looked at this gentleman's property over here, because he's my neighbor, and I see it's a steep pitch going there. So what's going to happen when it rains and the sand washes away?
Well, it's part of the, it's kind of part of the construction process. I mean, we have to get in there, we have to do the grading, we have to do the excavation.
Oh, I understand the construction process. I don't have a problem with that. But maintaining a grade, a pitch grade where it will maintain the bank is another thing. Because we have heavy rains down here. I know you know that.
We had a weekend of 20-plus inches a few years back. The canal handled it just fine. But I tell you, your sod's not going to do diddly squat at keeping that from eroding.
We were told that part of the reason why trees were left on our property when we built our house was the fact that that helps to prevent all that traffic getting into the
You see?
If you're going to eliminate the trees from a good part of the right-of-way that's part of the city, by draining and dredging all of that, and eliminating all those trees, unless you put up some kind of a retaining wall, the sod, I don't think is going to prevent that. I may be wrong.
You see,
Somebody with better knowledge can tell me that the sod is going to help prevent that erosion.
Once you establish vegetation, yes, it will help prevent the erosion. The trees, the trees don't do as much. They don't help prevent erosion as much as you may think.
We have a question over here.
you see, to summarize all the complaints, the problem is that the turf situation, the condition of the earth at the edges, every lot has a different soil quality. When the roots of various trees are removed, nothing holds it. Question is there any reinforcement soil, special soil, to do the slope? Because some areas, slope is 10 feet, I count 10 feet is a property line, and the slope's 10 feet. Sometimes slope is 15, sometimes slope is 5, depending on the area. But again, if you see the lots, every lot has a different soil. Some of them used to have springs, natural springs. That means, that's a long story. Point is, when the trees are removed, nobody knows how tall would be a level of the water in those canals, in the waterways. That's their complaint. In other words, if everything covers with the water up to, up to the property line, see what I mean? That means the slope will be disappearing, theoretically, with the hurricanes. But the quality of soil is such that in a year or so, some areas, some lots, will be having hanging property. In other words, water will be underneath their property. Because it's a sandy, silt and muck.
I'm not sure if I'm
So-
really following what you're saying.
The question is, what would be during litigation, for instance, if you leave 2-3 trees and they will fall on their houses, who's going to be responsible? Because it's washed off by the construction. Litigation for the insurance companies.
It's called an act of God.
Well, it's not act of God. Because it was, just a second, when the river is widened, the level of water comes to your property, and the trees remaining would be in jeopardy of falling, definitely not in the water, but on your house. And insurance people, adjusters, will say, city will be responsible. And then because we didn't tell them, we knew, so we are half responsible for that too. But again, we don't have a hard soils. I repeat myself. You know what I mean? If my question is there such animal as a reinforced soil?
Yes.
To reinforce those slopes?
Okay, give us a chance to answer your question. This is John Minton. He's one of the engineers, one of our consultants. and he can talk to you a little bit more about how this works.
On the question about the stability of the slopes, the design, the original design of those canals was a standard of a 1-to-4 slope on the sides and a 16-foot bottom width. And so that's, what we're striving to restore it to. In some places, it will be steeper than 1-to-4, but that's the standard. And 1-to-4 is a, relatively stable slope. It's pretty common.
Certain lots are still built by silt. In other words, the silt present on the lots.
Right. And, well,
Facing the canal. So basically, some of them have a natural dirt, some of them little hills. But some people have just a fill up. And another thing, when the empty lot is there, you don't know what's underneath. There are some empty lots facing Eisenhower and the East Hampton canals where these people never visit Palm Coast. They don't care. Forgotten members. So I mean, so you don't know what quality is there. So theoretically, it can wash off, and these trees might fall left and right, on both sides, because you widen it. And during the hurricane, so I mean, the silt, the condition of dirt, we cannot replace it. It's given to us. So now it's a Pandora box. You widen, you allowing water to approach the.
I get the idea from some of the things you said. You're expecting the water to be up higher now?
Yeah.
No.
Theoretically, because you open up the reservoir. You open up.
So Mike, what I think might help from what I'm hearing is that there is a concern that when we clear this debris away, I think there's two things. One is, where does this buildup come from over time? Is it coming solely from rain washing off of the banks and washing this down there? And then I think the second part is that there is a concern that that over time, as we clear these away and more water will flow as we open those up, and maybe we have examples in other parts of the city, that there's a possibility of that affecting properties by erosion over time, and that would creep away and weaken the backs of properties is kind of what I'm hearing from a couple folks of that. And is that, doing this project, how do we maintain the integrity of the property surrounding it, as well as what is expected to continue to build up more of this silt and whatnot that needs to be dredged over time?
A lot of the silt comes from upstream. A lot of it comes from lots. A lot of the muck and material in the canals comes from the trees that have built up over years. Now, I don't know if you want to talk about what we're doing to stabilize the soils and erosion protection.
Right. So part of why this is such a big project is that we are trying to, keep the slopes as gentle as possible, and that's part of the reason why we have to go so wide. Because if we just went in there and, dug the minimum amount needed to, get a slope back on the ditch, then we would have a worse problem then with erosion, on the side slopes and everything. So this is kind of the best that we can do within the space that's available to us. And then, so as Mike explained earlier, we're starting kind of from the downstream up. So, this is really the way we have to do this to end up with a better system for the whole east section. Start with the biggest part of the system, which is the canals, and work our way upstream. So, there will be more work needed, in the ditches that come off of the canals and in the swales, at the upper end. And, all that will kind of work together as far as reducing the amount of silt and debris and stuff that could get back into the canals. We're going to try to get all that out as we go upstream.
I didn't really have a question. I just have a comment. If folks who have concerns, if they go down Royal Palms and look at the canal there, where it goes down to the road that comes out of Town Center and goes over to over to Old Kings. Yeah, that whole area has been cleared for quite some time and just has a slope down to the canal. And it's just got sod on it, and I don't see any problems with it over there.
Yeah, but the slopes in that area are less steep than the ones we see over in this section.
Well, you can't judge what you see now as, that's not what it's gonna look like when we're done. I mean, what you're seeing now is, you know, construction conditions.
I believe myself, I live on one of the main backs of East Hampton. We have just a small cul-de-sac that goes one way and then has to travel further the other way. And our main problem there is not so much what you're saying, but the trees itself. The blockage comes from pine cones, pine needles, and leaves. And right now, we've blocked up in about 4 different spots, and I haven't been able to see the bottom of my ditch in over a month now. So we got 4 streets that drain into one little small area in a cul-de-sac on Early. So I'm hoping that you just do a temporary fix to get past this hurricane season.
We have this gentleman over here, and then I'll be over.
I just have a quick question. As a courtesy to homeowners, are you stopping by and just giving them a brief description of the scope of the project that might be impacting your property? Or are you just going to show up and start doing it? I live in a nice neighborhood.
Well,
All they did is showed up in the backyard with the stakes out. So didn't stop anymore, they didn't tell us they were coming, they just showed up with stakes.
I was asking that, no conversation, no communication?
if we're doing anything that we think is going to potentially impact your property, yes, we'll be communicating with you, definitely. But the intent is not to stay off your property.
But I've been in Ponco since 2010. That property in the back, I've maintained it for the last 11 years, because you guys haven't done anything back there with the trees and all the debris back there, cutting the grass and so forth. I'll get back to your question, your commentary on communication. I would think in the spirit of transparency. I mean, I first heard about this project to the Cypress neighborhood. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, I get a little note in my door to come to this meeting. Did you get any feedback from the property owners as a courtesy?
Yes.
Communication. You said you gave them communication.
That's great.
This seems to be retroactive to after the project has been approved and even started, versus getting some feedback from some of the property owners, some of their concerns, understanding some of their concerns, and some of the reservations they might have concerning this project.
And it's good input, absolutely, that we'll see if we can get the communication out to the community, the individuals prior to these projects starting, and stuff like that.
My self-interest in my own property there, so I want to understand how much you're going to be taking in the back. So that's why I asked the question, is somebody going to be visiting, just to give us a brief description of what's going to be taking place in that, whatever it is, 50 yards, 20 yards.
I'm trying to make sure I understand the question. You're asking if we're going to go door to door and talk to every property owner? I think this is part of the process of having that communication so that we can do it on a larger scale and not necessarily have to go door to door.
High level, people can't get an understanding of what's going to happen to their individual property. That's great if you're talking a very high level,
Well,
but it's not getting to the specific.
well, that's what I'm saying. We're not doing work on your property. We're doing work within city-owned property.
That's a plausible reason it's not your property, so we can do whatever we want.
You know, if I may real quick, you talked about, hey, we're so far into our communication. This is supposed to be completed already. Nothing was ever complete or discussed. Work is already done, nothing was discussed. Even by your own, you're already 10% construction. This was supposed to already been done a couple months ago, but yet there's never been any discussion, any communications to people, any feedback. I mean, my question is, Environmental impact studies required, but yet you can't find it on here.
I
Yes,
don't,
it is by the state of Florida, it is required, look it up. So that would be the question, communicate with us. So,
well, it did, I mean, I can't say that we couldn't have done a better job on the communication, but we did, it has been out there on the internet and social media for quite some time.
That won't wash.
Okay, okay.
Mike, we have a question over here.
All right, question over here. I live over on Emerson Drive, and the East Hampton Canal is behind us. Section from the Lehigh Trail to the East Hampton Bridge, that's pretty much on the east side, is pretty much wiped out at this point. All the trees, just on the east side, all the trees are gone pretty much. So if you're wondering if it's going to impact your property, pretty much up to the city's end of property, those trees are going to be gone except for a couple that might be within 2 or 3 feet. The question I've got for you, though, is at the beginning of the project, we had this giant piece of equipment that had a giant claw on the end of it. It went through and ripped down the trees, okay. It went up and down and was moving those piles of debris into certain locations behind people's lots or empty lots and so forth. And then after that was done, another giant piece of equipment on, I guess you call it track driving system, with another giant claw came in and was able to grab piles of trees and drag them down the canal. And in so doing, it was acting like a brush, pushing huge amounts of sand back into the canal. So now that the bank is pretty well flattened where those two pieces of equipment have gone up and down, what's going to happen following? We now need to, and this is where your input is important, how do we dredge out the canal? Does another track piece of equipment come along with a big scoop and dig out the canal and dump it on the bank? Or is there some other means of scooping out the canal? And once that's finished, then how is the bank going to be regraded to the appropriate section? What kind of tool or piece of equipment is going to be used to do that? And then lastly, since we're going to put sod on it, how does the sod get in there? What kind of tool is used and how is that dispensed across that section? And in particular, the section from Lehigh to the East Hampton Bridge, what's the schedule for that? We need to get the other side of the bank wiped out and regraded and so forth. But what's the schedule for that entire portion of the East Hampton Canal? If you could take me through those different processes and tools, I'd appreciate that. So everybody can have a better understanding of what to expect.
Okay, so the first part's asking me what type of equipment's being used to do the work, is that right?
Right. Big claws, tracked equipment, knock down trees and so forth, which I explained. Moving on to the dredging.
Well, no, there's a combination of different types of equipment, and that's largely,
Okay, just for East Hampton to Lehigh Trail then, talk about that section since that's the first section, the prototype.
the means and methods of, basically, we have an objective. So you hire the contractor, this is what you have to accomplish, this is what you have to provide to us. Okay, this is the finished product, these are the shapes, these are the contours, the depths, you have to stabilize the banks. We give them criteria. The means and methods that they get there with is pretty much up to the contractor. He's going to use various equipment, backhoes, track hose, whatever he thinks is necessary to accomplish the work that we've asked him to accomplish. And I guess the next part was...
Are they going to dredge out the canal? The guy I talked to that was driving one of these pieces of equipment said they've got a tool that they're going to use, a track piece of equipment with a scoop on the end. They're going to scoop it up, pick that stuff up, and plop it on the banks. That stinky, smelly stuff that you admitted to is going to sit on the bank then, and then they're going to come in and regrade that, is what subcontractor and subcontractor and subcontractor explained to me how it was going to be done.
All that material is going to be removed. They may scoop it out and set it on the bank, and then a truck comes in and they load the truck, but it's not going to remain on the bank.
I don't know, how are they going to get this truck down there?
Well, that's one of the reasons you have to clear beyond the top of the bank of the canal. You have to have access to get in to do the work.
I have a question. My property is on Eastwood, and it borders a canal. Is it going to be staked, or if it's not staked, is it going to be ignored?
No, it'll be staked. If you're on the canal, your property line will be staked out.
It will be in the future staked out?
Yes.
Okay. I'm a former science teacher, and this looks like an engineering presentation that's gone awry. Honestly, this is one of the most useless maps I have ever seen as a teacher. You can't read anything on it. This other one, Belterre's not listed, and the golf course behind me is not on it, just a symbol for a swamp. It would be helpful if you're going to communicate with the public to show a couple of slides of a typical canal where it's staked and a picture of some of these wonderful machines that are doing this work, because this is just confusing to the average homeowner that we're not necessarily going to be contacted, according to what you said, about what's going to happen to our property for real. You know? Because you're not going to take all the city's property. You're going to take what you need to make the canal function. And it's all to the imagination of each of us rather than seeing something that might represent a typical project. Your engineers are just doing engineer stuff. They're not doing teaching here. But that's all I have to say.
If we have any of those images and whatnot like that, we have a list started for the neighborhood, and I know everybody that's signed in, it looks like everybody has left an email address, which I could take that and add to that list. So if anybody's not already on it, they'll be added to that, and maybe we can get some of those visual representations that you're mentioning, because that actually is a screenshot. The GIS map online, there's various views that you can filter through. So that was just one screenshot of that, but we can try and get some of those out.
Good access to a computer.
Okay.
I live on Eagle Harbor Trail, which is on the east side of the canal, with the golf course on the opposite side, on the west side. Now, we all have our property initially staked, which is where the property line is. We all know that. But what I want to know is, are they going to do anything on the golf course side? Because behind us, and there are several of us that live right there, it's all trees, and then the fairway is on the other side of the trees. There's also like a little grassy area, and then you have the tee box. Are they going to encroach upon the golf course side too, or just on the east side of the, and this is, I'm talking about from East Hampton southward. You know, and there's several of us, you know, that live on that particular side. So are they just going to come in on our side, or are they also going to do on the golf course side? Also, another question I'd like to ask is what they're going to do with the sludge that comes out. You said they're going to maybe just dump it and then haul it all out. They're not going to just dump it and leave it and then smooth it out. Okay.
And the work is going to stay centered in the right-of-way of the canal. So, you know, for the most part, there'll be kind of an even amount of work on each side. So if that happens to be along the golf course, there'll be some impact most likely on the golf course side too.
There's a lot of trees over
there. Now that the city has decided to take back the property behind our homes, and they are creating a deeper area that's going to create a situation where it's going to be larger to maintain and stuff like that. So since they are taking it back, who's responsible for keeping it maintained? If the grass grows up higher because of the, the slope that you've created, because it's going to be close to the water, we are getting kind of old, we might fall in.
So who maintains that property if there's overgrowth and things like that?
I would say generally, it's a drainage way. So if overgrowth reaches a point where it's impeding flow, it's restricting flow, it creates any type of health, public hazard, then yes, we will get in there, we'll maintain it, and we'll take care of it. But, otherwise, we tend to just let it, natural plants and habitat come back.
So it shouldn't create a worse situation because of the
No, I think it's going to create a better situation. But like I said, typically we let nature kind of do its thing unless it's creating a problem. And if it's causing a potential health or public safety hazard, then yes, we'll come in and take care of it.
Mike, we have a question right over here.
Yes, I'd like to determine if I can. I moved into my house on April 23rd. So it was a kind of a shock to my system when I got to take a look at my backyard and found that I was going to be inundated with excavation very soon. But I guess what I was mostly bothered by was the fact that I was uninformed of what was going to happen. And when I moved on April 23rd, like I said, completely lost. So it was this lack of understanding and the lack of presentation, transparency, that kind of bothered me a great deal. And I was one step thinking about maybe I made a mistake. But the long and short of it is I know it's your property, town property, but it enhances or detracts from our own values of the property we have on the property. We have. And I realize that. Your sequence of how you're going to do the job and get the excavation done and completed, I empathize with you. I was in customer service for 23 years for the railroad, and I know what you're going through. But we'd like to be given an opportunity to be able to know what you're going to do. Don't leave us in the dark, please, because we can make decisions or informed decisions, at least if we know what's happening. And as a result of it, this is what's really going on here. We seem to have it. What I'd like to do and see is a gradual transparency on your part to let us know what's happening within our own boundaries. Thank you.
We got one question. So did you want to respond to that, Mike?
Well, this is kind of a step in doing that, to get to talk to you, get your input, answer your questions, try to provide some information and some clarity. And I understand it's not going to answer all your questions, it's not going to make everyone happy. We want to be as transparent as possible. And we're, moving forward, we're going to put more effort into it. I guess I'm not clear to what level you want to be informed. One of the things we do is we can put a lot of information on our website, and we can communicate that to you so you can go in and look at everything. You can look at everything we got. You can look at the plans. You can look at any reports. You can look at calculations. We'll share anything we have with you. So maybe that's one of the things we do. If everyone fills out our sign-up sheet, we'll make sure that information is communicated to you as far as where you can go and access it, and you can go and access any information we have and ask any questions you want to ask.
We have a question. One moment.
Right on the canal. You know how many homeowners are being impacted by this?
Yeah. Let me.
He's asking, he wants a number, not the number of people in the room. How many?
How many
How many are?
homes are on the canal that are impacted by this project? 150,
I don't have the exact number. When I pulled the original, if you, I can get the exact number. I don't have that, and I apologize. When I pulled the original list, what's called, drawing a line around that area, it comes up, there's a larger number that comes up, and then I whittle out, I take out what doesn't have email addresses, and that came up to like 169 on the one side. So there's more than that. And this is all great feedback, and first of all, welcome to Palm Coast, and thank you for coming here. But it's great feedback, and it's something that helps me as a communications officer to work with the stormwater and engineering team, because to give you an idea, and there's as I hear these things, I'm always thinking further, is that we have about 70 capital projects going on in the city at any given point in time. And, maybe that's something we can work together to find out, hey, what's starting this week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks out, and communicate that a little better out to the community. So I appreciate that feedback, because that is helpful. We do have one question over here, and then we'll come back over here.
Matt, before you go any further, I'm your councilman in your area. I'm also your vice mayor. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just figured that this is your time for you. I'm your councilman and also city's vice mayor. I'm Eddie Branquino. I apologize. Let me start by saying this. I'm a retired police officer. These people, the staff, cannot teach me how to arrest somebody. I will not tell them technically what to do. But you put me here. I gotta take the heat. The buck, when it comes to the heat, stops here, stops with me. But they have to answer the questions that you're here for. I'm taking notes today. I could have had the meeting with them a week, 2 weeks ago, and know everything that they're telling you here. But guess what? If I'd done that, I didn't know what your concerns were. And I need to know what your concerns are. Because if I don't know what your concerns are, which, by the way, are my concerns too, I will not be doing the right job. I've heard a couple of things here today. And even though I cannot answer the technical questions, I'm going to keep in mind erosion. It's a big problem. The gentleman over there spoke about erosion. The answers, to my opinion, were not completely given. But once again, I cannot tell staff what to answer. Because the minute I do so, like I said, I will not allow them to tell me how to arrest a person. I will not tell them how to dredge something. But, having that said, I mean, we can't go as far as retentions. Like the gentleman said over there, retention walls would be something crazy. But, as an answer, we need to hear that. And that's what we're here for. Communications, Mr. West. That's something we have to work on, because a lot of people had no idea, I had no idea what was going on. They need to know. That's all I'm asking. Communications, got to be a better way to communicate to people here what's going on. This is serious concerns. They're not here just for the heck of it. They invested their life savings over here. Sir, I'll promise you I'll answer your question once I'm done. Like I did, that's my life savings. That's my life savings. Transparency. That's one thing I guarantee you. From this moment on anything that goes on here, I request and I demand. When I mean demand as a resident, I demand transparency. This city just won, not long ago, a award for the most transparent city in the state of Florida. We want to keep it like that. And apparently, we didn't see it here today. It may be a laughing matter for you, but I'm proud of it. And also, I think this out of my notes. It should be done, this engineering project should be done with the least disturbance or damage to anybody's property. And I'm going to find out a little more about that, now that I know what your concerns are. We also, questions were timelines, important timelines. Somebody here is going to have to tell us what is the timelines. Also, someone was asking about the machines, the technical aspect. We also would like to know, even though sometimes it's tough for a construction company to explain to us, hey, this is how we're going to be doing. Some of us will understand it, some of us won't. Excuse me?
Why isn't that contractor here tonight to explain that very question?
Well, that's why I'm referring to it. Because if I don't know, you won't know either.
Right.
And those are the things I want to know. And I want to be clear about it. And if I'm not clear here tonight, trust me, tomorrow morning, I'll be at the right place to find out. Which is something that you were told you could do. So I would take advantage of that. Also, honestly, and I'm not one to criticize staff. This little 2 pamphlets we have over there, the teacher just told us, actually was, in my opinion, a little poor. Has to be done better, and we could do better, and we have the intelligence, we have the good staff to do a little better. Trust me, I know they can do better. And I'm pretty sure they'll do better when it comes to presentations regarding, especially with the pamphlets, that doesn't really give us much of information, but gives you some information. Maintenance. Who's going to maintain it? How are they going to maintain it? This is something that we all want to know. But I finished by saying that we have to trust. We have to trust. Don't trust me. I'm here as a politician, even though I don't like to be called a politician. Trust the engineering staff. Please trust them, because they are good professionals. But I don't know the company that is doing the work. I really don't know. But the staff that we have over here, I would put my life in their hands, because they're good at what they do. And unfortunately, you're here for technical answers. I cannot answer you. This is only the political part. And this is what you want to know, I want to know. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Mike, we have a question.
I just want to say this. Could we schedule another meeting, and so you can really give us a good presentation? Have those people available to answer our questions and tell us what's going on in the next couple of weeks? Is that so hard to do? You know what the questions that we're asking, so that's all we say is, can you give us the answers?
One of the things that would be helpful if you...
Well, folks, if we can...
One of the things that would definitely be helpful, if you could maybe take the time, when you have the time, when you go home, go to their website or go to one of the links we've given you, send us your question. And then if you do that, we can make sure we address every question. Now, part of this is we have to anticipate what your questions are, and sometimes maybe we, quite honestly, may get caught off guard. But, and I just wanted to say something about, the trust factor. You have 3 professional licensed engineers in here. Carmelo is back there. He's the engineering manager. This is a very ethical profession. The first canon of ethics in the professional practice of professional engineering is you hold the public health, safety, and welfare paramount above all else. And we take that seriously. So the intent here is sincere. We're trying to provide flood protection to the community. We're trying to protect your property and your homes. That is a huge part of our goal. Now, in that process, it gets complicated. There are a lot of things to deal with. We don't like taking down trees. We want everyone to be happy. but there are certain things we have to do to accomplish that. And we're trying to be transparent, and we'll try to be more transparent. And like I said, any information we have, we'll make sure it's out there where you can pull it out and look at it. If you want to look at our plans and the details, we'll be happy to share them. I guess one of the reasons we didn't bring that kind of information is we weren't sure how much that would mean to a lot of people, to be honest. But if that's the kind of information you would like to see, we're more than happy to share it and explain it.
Mike, we have a question right here.
Question, these engineers, do they work directly for the city? Who are these engineers? Are they consultants?
I work for the city, Carmelo works for the city, John is a consultant that works for the city.
A consultant engineer. And what type of engineer? What was your degree in? What type of engineer?
Bachelor of Science of Civil Engineering.
Civil
at
engineering.
University of Florida.
Okay, that's what I needed to know, civil engineering. Thank you.
See some gator colors out there.
We had Eagles first. And I'm from South Jersey, so I liken that shirt. I'm sorry.
In recognition of what you just addressed, can you tell us whether or not the city of Palm Coast ever did an impact study before ever contracting this?
I asked you guys no answer. You guys looked at each other.
As far as the permitting for this project,
Environmental impact study.
which is related to this. This is considered a maintenance activity by the state.
Because the canals were already there.
You're right.
And it is permitted through water management, certain rules that we have.
We had meetings with the Water Management District, and that was their determination.
Basically, my concern, and hopefully my husband's too, is we have a vinyl fence. When we moved in, we're on Evans Drive, we're right on the canal. It was a mess in our backyard. We spent over $2,000 just cleaning up our own yard. We weren't gonna clean up what the town never touched. So we put up a white vinyl fence in our entire property, right on the line, permitted, done by Liberty Fence, did an excellent job. Is our fence in jeopardy when you do what you're gonna do? Okay, because if it starts eroding, I'm not going to lose my $5,000 fence. Then I'm happy because it's going to be clean. Thank you.
This is just strictly from a gardener's point of view. I don't understand why the engineers didn't call arborists in to tell them, if you remove this many trees, this is what's going to happen to this property, because an arborist would certainly understand that. And the comment that you made about nature taking its course, none of us are going to live that long to see nature take its course and rebuild that canal. I mean, it's not going to happen. And to even the life that lives in there now, there's turtles, frogs, when are they going to come back? I mean, I don't understand it. And the other thing, and I just wanted to mention this as a gardener, if you have to repair property like this, not use sod, the city should spend some money and put the best fountain grass, muley grass, whatever they can to hold that back that would not have to be maintained by the property owner. And that may cost a little bit of money, but at the same time, it would help these poor people, because I know what your property looks like. It's a scorched earth over there. Horrible.
Give one over here, and I'll be back.
I just want to say I have mixed feelings about the trees being cut because they do, well, mainly for the birds, it's on my concern. But every hurricane we have, I worry about those trees falling on my house, and there must be 20 of them back there. I'll be glad to have them cut. And if you're worried about weeds or something taking over in Florida, in 2 months that bank will be covered. You can't stop weeds down here. And I think you guys are doing a good job. I could tell where everything is on this map. And I mean, I'm happy with what you're doing. You have all kinds of information out there, and a lot of people like to complain, and I think you're doing a great job.
Yeah, hi. Two things. The effort by the city, you would think that if you would have gone along the canal and marked the trees that you were going to take down before, at least everybody in this room would know what they're up against. Right now, we don't know what we're up against. We don't know what trees are going down, and everybody's worried about that. But if the city just would take Carol Minnie or somebody from the arborist, like you said, is just go and mark a big spot on each tree that you're going to take down, then we can have a better discussion. Okay? And the other thing is that everybody's talking about maintenance, okay? The city's going to be in a little bit of a bind because the governor has said that the use of prisoners for maintenance is no longer going to be used for a while. I don't know how long it's going to be before we get enough people in, enough of the guards and things that are going to be able to watch the prisoners as they go. But the prisoners have done a lot of work in this city. People don't know that, but they've done a lot of work in this city. And if we don't have them, the city is going to be responsible for maintenance. And you're just adding more maintenance on to with this project, and it's going to be a big cost for the city. Have you discussed that?
One of the reasons there's such a high level degree of maintenance is having to be performed now is because there's been no maintenance for 50 years. If it's regularly maintained, it's a much easier project.
My question to you is that after the trees have been removed and the erosion starts, what are you going to do to stop it? Are you going to put a retainer wall or what?
Well, the preferred method of controlling erosion is through vegetation. So that's the plan. And that's
Vegetation will do it at this point.
that's pretty common general practice.
And you have a heavy rainfall, everything is going down.
Well,
so the critical time is right, like during construction and right at the end of construction, when it's that bare earth. And so that, that's part of it, is that the contractor has to, be careful about that exposed earth, and the rains and things that happen during that time. But he'll get the sod and seed and mulch established and, make sure that that starts growing. And once Bahia takes and, fills in, that's a good, method of erosion control. And Bahia is about the most hardy, plant without landscaping that we can use.
I think tomorrow, the crow will be in my backyard. That's why I'm so concerned about erosion with the rainy season coming and the trees removed. You all will have to do something just about immediately to prevent that erosion from occurring.
I think there's a little misunderstanding on a lot of people's parts in this room, and you did mention it, but I don't think you explained it well enough. You're stripping the trees. Right now, the banks are very steep. Erosion will occur until the dredging project is complete and the banks are sloped back very gently so that when the sod is placed down, it's stable. It's that short time period which you can't really avoid during construction that there may be erosion occurring. And that's going to fall into the canal, but the canal will be dredged. And once it's dredged, while the dredging is happening, the banks will be sloped back. And I think that's the point that people aren't understanding.
That's correct.
sod will do the job. A retainer wall or something like that might do the job, but the sod, as soon as it can get a heavy rainfall, all that sod is gone.
One of the reasons we're using this particular type of sod is because it's very hardy, it's very drought tolerant, thrives.
Okay, I just want a clarification because I'm confused after what she said. The comment was made that once they dig out the sledge or whatever is in there, it's going to be piled on the shore and then it will be carried off. Now, what's going to be put in it is new, nice, lovely dirt going to be brought in, to have the sod put on top of it? Or are we going to be faced with that sludge that came out of the canal is going to be dumped there and now we're going to put sod on top of that?
The restoration is pretty much cut. It's cutting out material, not filling in material. What you're talking about is placing fill and new material. We're not placing new material, we're removing material. And as part of that process, we're shaping the banks and reshaping the canal.
Okay, but where you're digging out, according to these folks, and I have seen from the street, I mean, it literally is this way. Now, you're going to dig out the sludge, and you're going to pile it up there, and then reshape it, and then put sod on top of that. Is that what you're saying? You're not going to take out the old nasty sludge, bring in nice dirt, and then reshape it, and then put the sod on it?
Right, yeah, I know what your concern is, and that's not in the plan for him to bring new material in. Yeah.
Where is it going? Where's the final destination on that material?
The contractor is responsible for hauling it off and disposing of it. That basically falls on him. He has a disposal area that's outside of, removed from any residential areas. So it's going to be removed from your neighborhood.
All the nuts, all broken limbs and everything. That's their game plan. They make it look pretty good.
Yes, all the debris will be removed.
You talked about Bahia grass being very drought tolerant, which is great, but right at the edge, where the water is, Bahia grass is not going to grow. Right below that is an open edged area. Is there any thought of putting in Florida-friendly natural plants that do not go out into, more like reeds that will protect the sides of the bank?
I mean, there's a certain area at that water line, the water elevation is going to move up and down as we get storms. And depending on where that water is, the grass may go all the way down in the water. If it's low, you're going to see some bare earth. Unless you...
Yeah, so what you prefer is, like some pickerelweed or something, like a native to go along the shore. And that's preferred for ponds, but when it's a conveyance way like this and the size that it is, we really can't promote vegetation down in the water because, you know, it's a conveyance way, and our main goal is, you know, to get water to flow through there. So unfortunately, we can't really do both in a, you know, confined one like that. It's 3 to 4 feet, depending on where you are. That's right. So it'll be 16 feet at the bottom. The base is 16 feet across, and then it goes up. Not all the trees.
Taking all the trees within the limits of construction, we have to do the work. If it's outside of the limits of construction, we're not taking it. So we're not clear cutting the right of way, that's what you're asking. Not to the edge.
I have a question. Like some of the trees in the back of my yard, I've made flower arrangements. Flowers. How do I know how many trees you're gonna cut down so I know to move the flower off?
You should go back to that stick, right?
So what you were explaining was, it sounds like we'll end up with 2 lines out there, one being the property line and then one being the limits of the clearing. At least in most places, we should end up with 2 lines. It sounds like so far the contractor has focused on, you know, setting the property line, so that should be your property line.
Yeah, that's what the right of way is,
100 feet.
Does it sound like if somebody, the stake is determining what your property line, if somebody had planted something, you planted something back there, it'd probably be good advice to, if you're thinking about removing that or transplanting it, it would probably, sounds like it's probably a good thing to do. Yeah.
Why are we doing this? Can't you dredge the canal and widen it as much as you wanted?
I think it lost its shape and you're trying to get it back, is what you're saying, right?
Right.
From where it was 50 years ago, you're trying to bring it back to do its job.
increasing its ability to get more water more quickly. So if you get a major storm or hurricane, we get water out of there before it's backing up in your cars and homes.
That didn't answer my question. That maybe I didn't understand. Why are we doing it?
Well, part of why this is such a kind of like a drastic looking project is the fact that it's been so long and nothing's been done to, you know, keep the big trees from growing in there and that type of thing. So we're trying to bring it back to what it was originally, which is pretty different than what it is today. And so that's why it seems like such a big project.
Can we expect to come back from the front sometime? In the front. We also got town property out front, right? Soil and everything.
Well, yeah, so what Mike was explaining is that, you know, this is a necessary step, and then to improve the ditches is the next step. Those are upstream of the canals, and then upstream of the ditches are the swales, which goes through, you know, your front yard. And so, you know, for a long time, they've been, you know, doing a lot of work on swales all around the city, which is good, but, you know, to really get the drainage right, we need to be working on the canal, you know, the downstream part, which is really the most critical, and working our way upstream so that all of that works together, from the swales to the ditches to the canal.
This all ends since the project completion.
January 2022.
That's for all the phases.
There was a slide that showed kind of the, yeah.
That was a good slide, the one that showed all the things.
We know if the downstream section needs any work. I mean, we're talking about
There are other projects planned for virtually the whole way down, all the way to the intercoastal.